Welcome to Wager Talk TV. I am Kelly Stewart, joined by two of our NHL handicappers and co-host and host of Puck Time every day on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. Carmine Bianco at Carmine Bianco WT on Twitter. Andrew McInnis at McInnis Picks on Twitter. So make sure you guys are giving both of them a follow. Today we're going to call this video NHL for recreational handicapping, right? What we do here on Wager Talk is we like to educate you. And as somebody who's recently got into hockey in terms of betting hockey more specifically, these guys have been very helpful. And again, Puck Time, Monday through Friday, Wager Talk YouTube channel. You can check out all of their stuff. Andrew, I'm going to start with you. Let's talk about scheduling spots, what you're looking for when to bet on or against teams.
Scheduling is very important to me, Kelly, when it comes to NHL handicapping, whether it's the first game of a road trip or the first game back at home after a road trip. You really want to make sure you're aware of a team's scheduling. How many games in a row have they played at home? How many games on the road? And I'll start with this. On the start of a road trip, I like to bet unders. I look for a lot more of a defensive effort, defensive mindset. And then nearing the end of a road trip, I want to bet overs. You know, very sloppy hockey, tired legs. You start to see mistakes, looking towards overs in that aspect. But looking at betting against teams, their first game back at home. Every sport you hear about it, but I'm telling you, it's a very profitable angle in the NHL I like to look for every single season.
I love that. Carmine, you want to talk more specifically about scheduling in terms of a forecasting, right? So we're talking about 82 game schedule. Explain to me how that's different than what Andrew's looking at and where we're trying to find some bet on spots.
The toughest thing I think through an 82 game schedule is one thing I used last year. And it worked extremely well for me, finishing obviously number one at Wager Talk, taking the title from Andrew. He's coming after me this year. But it was breaking the season down into three. I took literally the first 15 games, the last 15 games of the season, and then the middle, sort of the meat of the order, the 50-plus games. Because I think in the first 15 games of the season, with a limited preseason and players in and out of the lineups, that it takes them about 10 to 15 games to get their legs for these teams to play as well as you expect them to play, or as bad as you might expect some teams to play. And the final 15 games of the season, there are various traps because coaches for teams that are in the playoffs and are happy with their placing right now will start to manage minutes for their stars to keep them fresh for the playoffs. So sometimes you're playing on a team and not getting 22 or 23 minutes out of an Austin Matthews or Nathan McKinnon, and you're only getting 16 minutes from them. That's a big factor. Then there's teams who haven't made the playoffs that bring up players from their farm team to evaluate. So now you got guys coming up from the minors and playing those teams. So those are traps I look to avoid. But the middle 50, I find a team, and they're usually the teams that are in the top 4 or 5 of each conference, that they may have lost 3 or 4 games in a row. Look at the strength of that schedule of who they play. And if they played very good teams and looked respectable in losing, you can look at their future games, their next 6 to 7 games, and see, wow, they have a very favorable schedule. No back-to-back games, no travel days, 1 or 2 days in between. And that sometimes will forecast a winning streak. And you want to get on a winning streak at the beginning of the winning streak, not towards the middle or tail end of it. And it's something that I talked about on Puck Time last year with success, is finding a team that has a favorable schedule coming up that had an unfavorable schedule that led to some of those losses.
All right, really quickly, I wanted to give you guys a promo code just for those of you watching this video. Get 25% off either Carmine or Andrew's NHL package. That could be daily, monthly, or a whole season right now at wagertalk.com. Promo code NHL25. Only good for Carmine or Andrew, one-time use. Andrew, let's talk about special teams. I thought that was just a football terminology.
So special teams in hockey, of course, the power play and the penalty kill. And, you know, some teams, they struggle to score goals 5-on-5. They're in a rut. You know, they can't get things going 5-on-5. They get to the power play. The crowd's going crazy. The team needs a big goal. You want to be able to know, okay, is this team I'm betting on tonight doing well recently on the power play? And can I rely on them when they have that man advantage? And the other way of looking at it is the penalty kill. Great teams need to be good at both, but the penalty kill is huge. When you're going up against great teams like the Vegas Golden Knights, like the Boston Bruins, you have to be able to defend on the penalty kill and be able to block shots, clear the front of the net, all things like that. Kelly, I've talked to some really, really high-level coaches in hockey in my life. One rule I've heard is you want to get to 110%. No, I'm not saying effort level. Combined between penalty kill and power play percentage, you want to have a combination of 110. And so, I mean, if you get to that point, you can have either your power play making up for a bad PK or a penalty kill making up for a bad power play. But getting to 110%, whether it's 80, 30, 70, 40, whatever it might be with that ratio, in order to have a successful hockey team, you have to have both a strong power play and a strong penalty kill.
All right, Carmine, something I had to learn the hard way, regulation betting versus full game betting. Now, depending on your book, make sure you always double check the rules. But Carmine, explain to me, what are some of the advantage of betting the regulation line versus the full game line? And when would you normally recommend it be implemented?
Yeah, it is one, and if you're unfamiliar with it, obviously the full game line takes into consideration the overtime, 5-minute overtime, and the shootout. Whereas the regulation line is based on 60 minutes, and obviously you're going to get a better price in some instances. Now, a lot of people, what I'll look at, and I'm going to use an example of a team that is, let's say, a team is favored for the full game at minus 225. On a team that's favored at 225, and it's usually the higher ranked teams, Boston, Toronto, Tampa Bay, teams like Colorado, Carolina. Those are the teams that usually carry those prices. The regulation number on that is minus 140, but they've got to win in regulation time in order for you to cash that ticket. But if you look at, if you're betting, and let's just say your flat betting teams are minus 225, you have got to hit 69% on that 225, lane 225 to break even. Just to break even, you've got to hit 69%. Whereas with a minus 140 regulation, you've got to break, your break even point is 58.5% when you're laying only 140 juice. Now, you can look at it and say, well, that team that I played, if it goes to overtime and they win, it's going to increase or lower my break-even point on that 69%. It does by a few percentage points, but you look at teams that are normally in that price range. Dallas last season, 22 OT games, they lost 14 of them. The New York Rangers, 23 games last year, they lost 13 of them. And the Leafs, a team that is regularly minus 200 against the teams that are lower in the standings, 19 overtime games, last 11 of them. So if you're decreasing it to 65%, that's still a high amount. And as a novice bettor, it is a harsh lesson to learn that betting high price favorites it's not going to make you a ton of money, and you've got to win a lot to make a little. I subscribe to the regulation, but not in every instance. There's probably about 6 a week that I will take, and it's normally teams that fare well. Minus 225. Just think of it this way: I consider OT and the shootout a coin flip. When a game goes to OT, it is a coin flip. And do you want a minus 225 on a coin flip? I sure wouldn't.
That's true. It's 110 on a coin flip, but that's just the math girl in me. Andrew, last question. Let's talk about depth. How many contributors are there every single night per team? We know that there are only a few guys that actually score. So let's get into that and how you use that in your handicap.
So, Kelly, quite often on social media, I'll get fan bases all wound up by making fun of how much money they paid a certain player, right? And it's not because the guy didn't deserve it, maybe, but it's because in the NHL, in hockey in general, compared to a sport like basketball in the NBA, there's 21 guys that are out there that play every single night. You can't have just the big three like you have in a sport like basketball, where they're scoring the majority of the points and doing all the work, because the fact is that ice time is very spread out. You look at the great teams of recent history. You've got the Boston Bruins, Vegas Golden Knights, Tampa Bay Lightning. People know who their superstars are, But unless you really follow hockey, people don't know about those second line, third line, even some of the fourth line guys that make a difference. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you're getting into betting hockey, if you're a recreational bettor, you need to go down the list and check to see, besides the best 4 players on a certain team, how many other guys are making an impact. And I'll tell you, every Stanley Cup winning team as of late has had other guys contributing, not with the top 4 guys being included. Tampa Bay is a good example. They were a dynasty. They had several years in a row where they were so dominant, and now they're kind of sliding. And the reason why they're sliding, Kelly, is not because they lost their superstars. Stamkos is still there, Kucherov's still there, Braden Point's there. They lost some other guys like Andre Palat, Yanni Gourde, just the guys that not many people would normally know and hear of. So my best tip really in the NHL is be aware of which teams have depth and which teams just have a few guys.
All right, before we wrap this video up, I wanted to remind you guys, one-time use only for either Carmine or Andrew's NHL package this season. You get 25% off over at wagertalk.com, daily, monthly, or the whole season. Promo code NHL25. Carmine, I'm going to let you back clean up here. And this is something that's really started to take off over the last few years, and that is prop betting. So please tell me how the NHL, hockey in particular, has really progressed from just sides and totals.
Yeah, I love the fact that there was prop betting. Last couple of years, I've gotten more and more involved in it and done a deeper dive into it. And last year was a great season. Finished first with props, and we're off to a great start this year. So I focus on shot props and specifically player shot props on goal. So I think there's 2 simple lessons that you can do, and there's a plethora of sites out there that give you information as far as player shots on goal, team shots on goal allowed. Sites like StatMuse, you can go to them, Hockey Reference. There are a ton. Do the research, but you look at it. And last year, something I did with success, Anaheim allowed almost 40 shots on goal per game. They're much better this season. This is just a snapshot at the time of filming, and you can look at this in March and do the exact same thing. And I'll give you tips in a second on how to do it. But this year, it is San Jose allowing 38 shots on goal per game. Those are the teams you want to play against because they allow a lot. Also, teams that take a lot of penalties, because your players, if you're choosing players that are on the top 2 lines of a team, they're also going to be on the top 2 power play lines. You're going to have more chances to get those power play shots as well too. What you want is as many opportunities as possible. Obviously, conversely, you look at the opposite of that. Don't play shot props against the teams like the New York Rangers, who only allow like about 25 shots a game, or teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins, who only take about 9 minutes in penalties a game, because you're not going to get those additional opportunities. So a snapshot of currently, right now, as we film this, Montreal Canadiens are allowing the 3rd most shots on goal. The Montreal Canadiens allowing taking the 3rd most penalties per game. They're a feisty team, but you can win with some shot props betting against the Montreal Canadiens because of that. 2 simple things, and you can find those on sites. Deep dive into it, get as much information, and learn as you go. But there's money to be made in props.
Great stuff from Carmine Bianco at Carmine Bianco WT, Andrew McInnis at McInnis Picks. Make sure you guys are giving both of them a follow. Appreciate all of their NHL insight and knowledge. Make sure you guys head over to the Wager Talk YouTube channel and check out all of our other handicapping videos.